Long, long ago, there lived a great king who had 4 beautiful daughters. But his youngest daughter was the most beautiful of all. One day she was playing in the palace garden, bouncing her favorite golden ball. She threw it high in the air, but when it came down, it fell into the pool. She looked over the edge and saw her golden ball lying on the bottom in the deepest part of the water. She couldn't reach it, so she sat down and cried. Suddenly, she heard a voice.
What is the matter, beautiful princess? Why do you weep so?
When she looked in the direction from which the voice came, she saw no one, just a frog sticking his green head and neck out of the pool.
Oh, it's you, old ugly frog. Well, if you must know, I'm crying because my favorite golden ball's out there in the middle of the pool and I can't get it.
Is that all? Well, don't cry, sweet princess, for I can help you. But what will you give me if I get it for you?
Oh, I'll give you anything you want, you dear frog. My royal robes, jewelry, or even my little golden crown. And I'm sorry I called you ugly.
Oh, that's all right. However, your royal robes, jewelry, and golden crown are not for me. What I really would like is to be your playmate and to sit with you at the table and eat from your little golden plate and drink from your little golden cup and sleep in your little bed. Now, if you will promise me all this, I will dive to the bottom of the pool and get your favorite golden ball for you.
Oh, yes, I promise. Whatever you want, you may have. All you ask, if you'll bring my ball to me.
That's what the princess said out loud. But this is what she said to herself.
What a silly thing he is. As if he could possibly be anyone's playmate. Why, all he can do is sit in the water and catch flies.
But as soon as the frog heard her promise, he ducked his head under the water and disappeared. In a very short time, he returned to the surface with the golden ball in his mouth and tossed it onto the grass. The princess was so happy at seeing her favorite ball again that she picked it up and ran across the garden toward the palace as fast as she could.
Stop! Stop! Wait for me! Wait for me! I can't run as fast as you!
But it was to no avail, for call after her as he might, she would not listen. Instead, she kept on running till she reached the palace, where she soon forgot all about the poor frog. The following day, while the princess was having lunch with the king and the whole court, they heard a hop, hop, hop up the marble stairway, then knocking on the door and a voice crying out,
Youngest princess, open the door!
She got up and ran to see who was there, but when she saw the frog, she quickly shut the door and went back to the table. Their father, the king, noticed that she appeared nervous and frightened, so he said,
My dear daughter, you're acting very strangely. Has something scared you? Is there a giant outside the door waiting to take you away?
No, Father, there's no giant. Just a horrible old frog.
A frog? Well, what does he want?
The princess told her father what had happened, and then she said,
Well, I didn't think he could live anywhere except in water. Now he's at the door and wants to come in.
They heard him knocking again and calling,
Youngest princess, open the door! Is your promise forgotten forevermore? Please, dear princess, open the door!
My daughter, once you've made a promise, you must keep it. Now go and let him in.
Reluctantly, the princess opened the door and the frog hopped in. He followed her as she returned to her chair at the table, and then he looked up at her and cried,
Lift me up so that I can sit beside you.
And the princess hesitated.
Daughter, do as he requests. A promise is a promise.
After she placed the frog on her chair, he hopped up onto the table.
Please move your golden plate a little closer to me so that we might eat together.
The princess moved the plate closer to the frog, who ate most heartily. But everyone noticed how much difficulty the princess was having in swallowing even a tiny bite.
I've had quite enough to eat. Now I would like to have a nap. You will carry me to your room, and we will lie down on your satin-covered bed and go to sleep.
Then the princess began to cry, for she was afraid of the cold frog and didn't want to lie down beside it. But he insisted that he must sleep in her nice, clean bed.
Oh, dear father, please tell him that he can't get in my bed.
You made a promise to the frog when you needed his help. As I told you before, you must keep your promise. Now, do as he requests.
So the princess picked up the frog, holding him with her finger and thumb, carried him upstairs and put him down in a corner of her room. Then she got into her bed, closed her eyes, and was just about to go to sleep when she heard,
I'm tired, and I want to sleep in your soft bed and not on the floor. Pick me up and put me in your bed, or I'll tell your father.
Now the princess knew that if her father were told, he'd make her do as the frog desired. So she got out of her bed, picked up the frog, and being very angry, threw the poor frog as hard as she could onto the satin quilt on her bed.
There! Now will you be quiet, you ugly old frog?
Just as soon as the frog landed on the bed, he changed. He was no longer an ugly frog, but a handsome young prince.
Oh, what has happened? You're not a frog at all. You look like a prince.
Yes, sweet princess, I am a true prince. Many years ago, a witch cast a spell upon me and turned me into a frog. She told me that I would remain a frog forever, unless a beautiful young princess would let me lie on her bed. And you, my dear princess, have broken the spell.
Oh, handsome prince, I'm so very happy. Please forgive me for being unkind to you while you were a frog.
I do forgive you, for I loved you from the first moment I saw you. And now, with your father's permission, I should like you to become my bride.
The princess's father gave his consent, and the handsome prince and the beautiful princess were married. And everyone throughout the kingdom rejoiced and celebrated the ceremony for 10 days. On the 11th day, the prince and princess returned to his father's kingdom. And in time, he became king and the princess queen. And they lived long and happily ever after. There was once a very poor miller who had a most beautiful daughter. One day he happened to meet the king of the land, and in order to impress him, he said,
Your Royal Highness, I have a daughter who can spin straw into gold.
Now, there is an art in which I am extremely interested. Bring your daughter to my palace tomorrow morning, so that I might see if this be true.
The following morning, the miller brought his beautiful daughter to the king's palace. The king led her to a room which was full of straw. Then he gave her a spinning wheel and said,
I want you to spin all this straw into gold. If you have not done so by tomorrow morning, then you shall die.
The king left, locking the door behind him. There she sat all morning and all afternoon, feeling very, very sad. She knew she couldn't possibly spin straw into gold, And when she thought that she would have to die in the morning, she cried and cried. Suddenly there appeared before her a little man.
Good evening, beautiful maiden. Why do you weep?
Oh, little man, the king has ordered me to spin this straw into gold or lose my life. I just don't know how to do it.
What will you give me if I spin it for you?
My necklace.
The little man took the necklace and sat down at the spinning wheel. Whir, whir, whir went the wheel 3 times around, and the spool was full of spun gold. Then he took more straw, and whir, 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 3 times more around, and the second spool was full. So he continued through the night, till all the straw had been spun into gold. At sunrise, the king came to the room to see how the maiden had progressed. He was astonished when he saw all the shining gold.
How marvelous! What an extraordinary maiden you are! Now let me see if you can do it again.
Then he led the poor maiden to another room, larger than the first, and full of straw.
Now spin all this into gold, or tomorrow you shall die.
After he had left her, the maiden began to cry. She still didn't know how to spin straw into gold, and she certainly didn't want to die. Just then, the little man appeared before her again.
What will you give me if I spin this straw into gold?
This ring on my finger.
The little man took the ring and sat down at the spinning wheel. Whir, whir, whir. All night he spun, and by the time the king arrived in the morning, the straw was all turned into shining gold. He was very impressed, but he was still not satisfied. So he led her to still another room, much larger than the others, and filled with more straw.
If you spin all this straw into gold by morning, you shall be my bride.
When the king had left and the maiden was all alone, the little man again appeared.
What will you give me if I spin this straw into gold?
Alas, little man, I have nothing left to give.
Then promise me your firstborn child.
The maiden did not want to give the little man this promise, but she was helpless. And besides, secretly, she thought that by the time her first child was born, the little man would have forgotten about it, or probably wouldn't even be around. So she gave him her promise. The little man sat down at the spinning wheel, and whir, 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 he spun till all the straw was shining gold. In the morning, the king found all the straw turned into gold. So he married the beautiful maiden and made her his queen. They lived together very happily, and after a year had passed, the queen had a beautiful little baby. This made them even happier than they had been before. Of course, in all her happiness, the queen had long ago forgotten the little man. But one day, he suddenly appeared before her.
Remember? You promised me your firstborn child. So here I am to take him away.
No, no, please, please. I'll give you jewels, gold, money, whatever you want. But please don't take my child from me.
I don't care anything about riches. All I want is your child.
The poor queen was so unhappy, for she loved her child very much and wanted to keep him with her always. She started to cry as though her heart would break. And then the little man took pity on her and said,
All right, all right. I'll give you a chance to keep your child. I'll give you 3 days. If you can guess my name in that time, you may keep your child. But if you can't guess my name, the child is mine.
All night long the queen lay awake, trying to think of all the names she knew. In the morning, when the little man arrived, she said,
Is your name Jeremiah?
No, that's not my name.
Is your name Gregory?
No, that's not my name.
Is your name Wolfgang?
No, that's not my name. Well, you have 3 more guesses tomorrow and 3 the next day. Better think harder, or the child is mine.
The Queen sent messengers throughout the country to bring back any new or unusual names that they could find. The second morning, when the little man appeared, she asked,
Is your name Legoland?
No, that's not my name.
Is your name Spindletops?
No, that's not my name.
Is your name Lobster Shell?
No, that's not my name. And now you only have 3 more chances. I'll be back tomorrow morning. Till then, think hard, or the child is mine.
Of course, the poor Queen was very unhappy. There were millions and millions of names in the world, and how was she ever going to be able to pick the right one with only 3 guesses left? But that evening, one of her messengers came to her.
Your Royal Highness, I came upon the strangest scene when I was out this afternoon. As I came close to the mountain near the edge of the forest, I saw a tiny house. In the yard in front of the house, a fire was burning, and there was the most curious-looking little man dancing around it on one leg and singing, "Today I roast, tomorrow I'll toast, for the child will be mine. I'm proud to boast, the Queen will never guess my name. It's Rumpelstiltskin. Ah, what a shame."
Thank you, my faithful messenger. You will be rewarded highly for your help. That night, the Queen was unable to sleep, for she was so excited and thought morning would never come. But finally, night was over and day dawned brightly. Soon, the little man appeared before her.
Now, Your Royal Highness, what is my name?
Would your name be Robert?
No, that's not my name.
Would your name be Alfred?
No, that's not my name.
Well, would your name be Rumpelstiltskin?
A witch told you. A witch told you.
Rumpelstiltskin became so angry that he stamped his foot on the ground. He got angrier and angrier and stamped harder than ever, till he finally stamped so hard that he sank into the ground and was never seen again. So the King and Queen and their beautiful child lived happily ever after. At the edge of a huge forest in a little cottage lived Hansel and Gretel with their mother and father. One day, while father was at work and mother was shopping at the market, Hansel said,
Gretel, let's go for a walk in the forest. Maybe we can find some nice berries and bring them home for dinner tonight.
Yes, let's. Mother and Father would be so pleased. I'll pack a nice lunch for us.
When the lunch was all packed in a picnic basket, off Hansel and Gretel went into the forest in search of berries.
Look, Gretel, there are a lot of berries over here. Come help me pick them. We can put them into the basket with our lunch.
They were having such fun, running from bush to bush, picking berries and trying to see who could pick the most. Time passed very fast.
Gee, Gretel, I'm hungry. Let's have lunch now.
All right, Hansel. We can sit down in that clearing over there. And then after lunch, we can take a little nap. I'm getting tired.
So am I. We've come farther than I thought we would. I'm going to save some of my bread. Then we can leave a trail of crumbs behind us so we can find our way back.
After their lunch and nap, they started out again. This time, Hansel dropped the crumbs as they went along, running and playing. They hadn't realized how late it was getting, but suddenly Gretel said,
It's getting dark, Hansel. We better start back home.
Okay. We'll just follow the breadcrumbs and we'll get back real fast. See? Here they are. Come on, Gretel. I'll race you.
They had gone only a short distance when they noticed that the trail of breadcrumbs had disappeared. The birds in the forest had eaten them.
Oh, Hansel, we're lost. What'll we do? Mother and Father will be so worried. Oh, why did we ever come?
Don't cry, Gretel. I'll take care of you. I'll find the way back. But we'll have to wait until morning. It's too dark now. We'll eat some of the berries for our supper, and then we'll go to sleep.
So they spent the night lying in each other's arms, Hansel comforting Gretel as best he could, for he was frightened too, but he couldn't let her know. When morning arrived, they saw a beautiful bluebird sitting on a branch nearby. It seemed to be calling them. Then it flew towards them and circled above their heads.
Gretel, I think he wants us to follow him. Maybe he'll show us the way home.
Oh, then let's follow him.
In a short while, they came to a wonderful little house.
Isn't that a nice house? Boy, it looks good enough to eat. Gretel, it is good enough to eat. It's made of gingerbread. It's good.
Oh, it has candy on it, too.
They were eating as fast as they could, for they were so hungry. After all, just a few berries for supper the night before wasn't very much. Besides, this gingerbread really did taste good. Suddenly, they heard a voice.
Gnawing like a mouse. Who's that eating up my house?
Then the door opened, and an old woman came out. Hansel and Gretel were so frightened that they dropped the gingerbread and candies they had in their hands. But the old woman smiled and said,
Don't be afraid, little children. I won't harm you. Won't you come in? I have nicer things inside.
So Hansel and Gretel went in. The woman gave them a nice hot dinner and then showed them 2 little beds, so nice and soft. It wasn't long before they fell sound asleep, for they hadn't slept very well the night before, since they were so frightened. But now they felt safe with this kind old woman. Poor Hansel and Gretel. If they only knew how much safer they had been in the forest than they were in the gingerbread house. You see, she wasn't a kind old woman at all. She was a witch. Now I must explain about the type witch she was. She had red eyes, so she couldn't see very well. But her long, pointed, crooked nose was as keen as an animal's, and could scent the approach of children, whom she dearly loved to eat. They were so tender, if cooked correctly. And this is what she had in mind. Early in the morning, before Hansel and Gretel were awake, she took Hansel from his bed and put him in a large chicken coop in the yard. Then she went to Gretel's bed and started shaking it.
Get up, you lazy bones. There's work to be done. Hansel must be fed. He's too thin. I like them fatter. From now on, you're going to cook fat fattening food for 'em. Lots and lots of it.
Poor Gretel started to cry and to beg for her brother's life. But it was to no avail. The witch was determined to have her way. So every day Gretel cooked food to fatten up Hansel. Every day the witch went to the chicken coop to see if Hansel was getting fat. A clever Hansel. When she told him to stick his finger through the wiring, Hansel stuck out a chicken bone. Now, as we remember, she couldn't see very well. She just couldn't understand why he wasn't getting fat. After about 2 weeks, she couldn't wait any longer.
Well, Gretel, today I'm going to eat your brother. I can't wait forever. I've already lit the stove. Find out if it's hot enough. I'm afraid I don't know how to tell whether it's hot enough or not. Would you please show me? Silly goose, it's simple enough. You just open the door, put your head in like this.
Clever Gretel. As soon as the witch bent over and put her head in the oven, Gretel pushed the witch and in she fell. Gretel slammed the door on her. Then she ran to free Hansel.
Hansel, the witch is dead. We're safe.
Just at that moment, a flock of birds, led by the lovely bluebird, flew over and landed on the gingerbread house. Where the candy had been were now precious jewels. Diamonds, pearls, rubies, and emeralds. The birds pecked them from the house and dropped them at Hansel and Gretel's feet. Hansel filled his pockets with them, and Gretel filled her apron. Then the bluebird started circling above them as he had before.
Gretel, see the bluebird? Maybe this time he'll lead us home. Let's follow him.
And that's exactly what the bluebird did. For in a short while they saw the most beautiful house in the world, their own little cottage. They ran toward it as fast as they could, crying out,
Mother! Mother! We're home! We're home!
Their mother and father hugged them and kissed them. They were so happy to have them home again. And Gretel opened her apron and Hansel emptied his pockets. Soon there were jewels all over the floor. Their mother and father were very pleased, but they said that the two most precious jewels of all were their son and their daughter, Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, a queen sat by her window sewing. Suddenly, the needle pricked her finger, and 3 drops of blood fell on the snow on the ebony windowsill. When the queen saw how lovely these colors looked together, she wished that she had a daughter with skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony. Not long afterwards, her wish came true, and the child was called Snow White. While Snow White was still very young, her mother died. A couple of years later, her father, the king, remarried. The second queen was very beautiful, but vain and jealous. Every morning, she looked into her magic mirror and said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" And the mirror would reply,
You are the fairest one of all.
This pleased her very much, for she knew that the mirror always spoke the truth. As Snow White grew older, she became lovelier and lovelier, till she was far more beautiful than the queen. So one morning when the queen asked her mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" the mirror replied,
Queen, you're very fair, I say, but Snow White's the fairest one today.
When the queen heard this, she flew into a rage and turned green with envy. Then she called one of her huntsmen and gave him an order. "Take Snow White into the deepest part of the forest and leave her there. Then the wild animals will destroy her." When Snow White found herself all alone in the forest, she became very frightened for fear that the animals might hurt her. But when they saw how sweet and lovely she was, the animals became very friendly and walked along with her, as if to show her the way. Before long, they came to a tiny little house. Then the animals, having done their good deed, scampered back through the forest, leaving Snow White at the door of the cottage.
What a darling little house. I wonder if anyone's home. Hello? Hello?
Nobody answered, so Snow White opened the door.
Hello? Anybody home? Oh, how nice this is. It's almost like a dollhouse with that tiny table and 7 tiny chairs. The table's all set, and there's porridge in the tiny bowls and milk in the tiny cups.
Snow White was very hungry and thirsty, so she went to the table and ate a little porridge from each bowl and took a sip of milk from each cup.
That was very good, but I do feel tired. Why, look, there are 7 little beds over there. I do think I shall lie down and rest for a while.
Snow White lay down and soon fell fast asleep. In the evening, the owners of the little cottage returned home. They were 7 little dwarfs who dug for gold in a mountain close by. As soon as they entered, carrying their 7 little lanterns, they knew someone had been there.
Someone sat in my little chair.
Someone drank from my cup.
Someone tasted my porridge.
Someone used my spoon.
Someone ate from my bowl.
Someone used my knife.
Someone used my napkin.
Then the 7 little dwarfs went over to their beds and saw Snow White. They cried out,
Oh my! Look how beautiful she is!
Snow White was so tired that she didn't even hear them and went right on sleeping till morning. At first she was frightened when she saw the strange little men, but they were so friendly that she soon found herself quite at ease with them. They asked her name and how she happened to be in their little house. And when she finished telling them, the 7th dwarf, who seemed to be the leader, said,
Will you stay here with us and keep the cottage clean and fix our meals? If so, we'll see that you shall never want for anything.
Yes, I will. Oh, thank you very much.
Each morning the little dwarfs went to the mountain to dig for gold, leaving Snow White all alone. She cleaned the cottage, mended their clothes, and had their dinner all prepared by the time they returned home. However, they warned her to beware of her wicked stepmother and to allow no one to enter the cottage while they were away. In the meantime, the queen, thinking Snow White was now dead, approached her mirror, saying, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?"
Queen, you're very fair, I say, but Snow White's the fairest one today, living in a cottage deep in the wood, with 7 little dwarfs, so very good.
Again the queen flew into a rage and was determined to kill Snow White. She ran up the stairs to the tower where she kept all her secret poisons. she took a beautiful apple, which was a brilliant red on one side and a golden yellow on the other. Very carefully, she poisoned only the red half, and then disguised herself as an old peasant woman and went back to the house of the little dwarfs. When she knocked at the door, Snow White opened the window and said,
I dare not let anyone in. My good little friends, the dwarfs, told me not to. But just look at this beautiful apple. Here, I'll give it to you. No, I dare not take anything. What are you afraid of? Poison? I'll break it in half, and you may have the beautiful red half, and I'll eat the yellow.
When Snow White saw the old peasant woman eating her part of the apple, and when she looked again at the brilliant red part, she could resist no longer. As soon as she took a bite, she fell down lifeless.
Ha ha! Now I am truly the fairest of them all. The dwarfs will not be able to help you this time.
As soon as the queen reached home, she went to her mirror.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?
You are the fairest one of all.
When the dwarfs returned home that evening and found Snow White, they cried and cried, for their own dear Snow White was really dead. Everything they had tried to do failed to revive her. She was so beautiful that they couldn't bear to bury her, so they put her in a glass coffin for everyone to see. All the animals and birds of the forest came to mourn Snow White and cried because she could no longer talk or play with them. She lay there for many years and never changed. She looked as if she were merely asleep. One day, a handsome young prince was traveling through the forest. He saw poor Snow White lying there and immediately fell deeply in love with her. He said to the dwarfs,
Please let me have this glass coffin. I'll pay whatever you ask.
We would not sell it for all the gold in the world.
Please let me have it. I cannot live without looking upon Snow White. I promise to love and protect her with my life.
The little dwarfs had such kind hearts. They felt sorry for the handsome young prince and gave her to him. The prince ordered his servants to pick up the glass coffin with Snow White and to carry it to his castle on the other side of the mountain. While they were following the path, one of the servants stumbled on a dead branch. It shook Snow White just enough so that the piece of poisoned apple fell out of her mouth. Immediately she sat up, lifting the glass lid above her, and said,
Where am I?
Snow White, my dear, you are with me.
The prince then told her all that had happened, how very much he loved her, and how very much he wanted her for his wife. Happily, Snow White consented. The animals, the birds of the forest, and the 7 little dwarfs danced and sang at the wedding celebration. Of course, kings and queens from other kingdoms were there too, and they rejoiced just as much as the animals, birds, and dwarfs. That is, all except the wicked queen. For when she saw that the bride was Snow White, her jealousy and anger became so great that her heart couldn't stand it, and she died. But Snow White and her handsome young husband lived long and happily ever after.